Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Indiana University South Bend pop-up university with our friends at Lang Lab here on the internet, because at the moment we can't be at Lang Lab. But of course, we're looking forward, hopefully, to the fall when we can be back together again for some exciting on-stage action. But in the meanwhile, we have a terrific online presentation for you tonight. With our colleague, Professor Merhi of Decision Sciences at IU South Bend. Before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about the presentation tonight. Pop-Up University is an event put on by the IU South Bend Office of Community Engagement and the IU South Bend Center for Excellence in Research and Scholarship. If you're interested in learning more about how your organization, business, or community group could liaise with IU South Bend for student activities, interns, or other activities, please contact Dr. Gail McGuire, Director of the Community Engagement Office. Or if you're interested in learning more about the expertise of faculty and the ways in which they may intersect with your interests, please feel free to get a hold of me, Josh Wells, at Ceres. We're, of course, extremely grateful to our sponsors, Indiana Humanities, the IU Bicentennial Office, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Academic Affairs, and a great many other departments and organizations through campus. Thank you all for your support. So tonight, it is my pleasure to present to you one of our campus's most engaging and energetic speakers, Professor Mohammad Merhi from Decision Sciences. He's also department chair of Decision Sciences at the Judd Layton School of Business and Economics at IUSB. Professor Merhi comes to us from the University of Texas Pan American and Emporia State University, where he received his graduate educations. And he's been recognized on numerous occasions as one of our campus's most engaging educators, winning numerous awards for both online education, which makes him a favorite in the current environment, and for his use of technology in data-driven classes on analytics and business security and intelligence. He's been published in many leading journals, including Computers and Human Behavior, the Journal of Global Information Management, and Computers in Education. He's received numerous grants for his research through Indiana University and other outlets, and he's here to talk to us about his recent research in security and the way in which we live our lives now online. Please, I know we can't hear it through the speakers, but I know right now we're all giving a big round of applause to Professor Merhi. Mo, I'm going to stop my screen share now.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you everyone for coming here and joining us tonight in this lecture. It's my pleasure to be here presenting to you and talk about one of the most critical topics that we hear about today, a topic that I love, a topic that I've been working with since I was a graduate student in my PhD I was working on, which is on information system security. My doctoral dissertation was on that topic. I came here to IU South Bend. I developed a course and I taught a course on this subject, and this is what I also do, and I've published many research on this topic. So I welcome you all here. Thanks again for joining us, and let's go to our presentation here. So we're talking tonight about information system security, and we're going to see from starting by what is it, why do we have it, going into its effect on people and businesses, and we're going into the employees' response to security, information system security policies. But before I start here, the way I teach my classes, I know we're not here in a class, but the way I teach, I prefer engagement. And this is my colleague Josh mentioned about the awards that I won because I use active learning strategies and all this. So before I start, I want to take a moment, please, here, read this scenario. And I wanted to respond to this. So what we have here, we have Tom, who's working in a company, and he's put into a situation. So we need to see, if you were Tom, how do you read to this situation? So I'm gonna give you a few minutes. Please read here this paragraph and write in the chat. So what do you do? If you were Tom, do you do the same, or you behave differently, or you make different decisions, etc.? For sure, Elizabeth, you can do that if you want. I hope everybody is seeing the responses. Everybody here is seeing the responses that we're getting. You're not seeing the responses. Okay, yeah. So if you can just respond to all panelists and attendees, because right now you're just sending to panelists. So what I have here, I have, I'd probably do what Tom did. I would not give my password. Sorry, Linda, no password. In truth, I would give Linda the password. I do not give the password to Linda because I may risk being fired for violating company security policy. I would not. We are not seeing the responses. Okay. Would he be able to use a VPN to get into his desktop? This is what we have right now. So we have this situation. We're not talking about VPN. We're not talking about any more details beside what we have. I would probably remind the project manager of the password rule and tell them to wait or get permission from higher ups. Actually, perhaps there's some other way for Tom to access remotely and share it with her in a shared file. Okay, thank you. Thank you for all these responses. We're coming back to these responses in a bit. So for now, let's move and see what is information system security and why do we have it. So as we know nowadays, technology is in everything in our life. All of us, we have computers, all of us, we have cell phones, all of us, majority of us are on social media from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc., etc. Right now, this current, where we are right now, we're using Zoom to conduct this seminar instead of meeting face-to-face. We're using this video conference. So we're using technology, and technology is impacting us in everything. What caused it? Because life is changing. Computers are becoming faster, cheaper, cloud computing, data analytics. Everybody's talking about data analytics. Everybody is interested in data. Organizations are accumulating tons and tons of data in their databases and in their data warehouses. And this is the main thing that it's impacting us, as technology is impacting us and impacting the organizations. At our personal life, it's impacting us as personally, socially, professionally. Nowadays, if you want to buy anything, you just go online, Amazon, or you go Best Buy, you go to any website, so we buy. Before you travel to Chicago, for instance, you need to go and check the weather. So you're not waiting to go on TV and wait for the news to check it. You just go and check it online on your phone. You want to use GPS, you've never been. So this is how Internet of Things is impacting us. to go. Same for, so here are different things that is impacting us as technology. Is impacting us from health monitoring to online calendar to home security to appliances in home to garage. You can open your garage, you can close your garage, you have cameras, etc. surveillance. So all of these are Internet of Things, and these are technological innovation that are impacting our organization. For businesses, they have to adapt, they have to change because consumers are changing. They are always demanding and they have to move. They have to move to virtual stores. We know many of the retail stores now are closing because everything is going online, everything is virtual. We have more remote sensors, etc. And with that move, organization there want to move, and they have also to have a strategy. Without having strategies for this move, starting from how they're going to behave, how they're going to deliver, how they're going to hold the data, how they're going to save the data, how they're going to interact with their customers. So they have to have some strategies in order to solve these potential problems that might occur. And we're going to talk about different problems. So moving now to what's interest for us here is the information system security. But before I move to information security, I want to talk about the information systems. What is it? So it is the hardware, software, data, people, and processes. So we use machines, we use technology from hardware and software to collect and process data using people's intelligence in order to make decisions in organizations. So now, if we apply this same definition to security, we can apply it exactly, but now with the purpose of not only getting data, but now with the focus on the data, but now we're focusing on how should we store this data and how should we preserve it and save it so it doesn't get leaked. Okay, so what are trying to save? At the personal level, you're trying to save your own personal information, your personal identification, from name to address, social security, probably credit cards, etc. For organizations, they're caring about what I listed for us as individuals. They're talking about customers' data. They're talking about the network infrastructure, intellectual property, because every organization has some intellectual property, financial data, service availability, and their reputation. They don't want to be on the news to say X company lost so many thousand of records for employees, and they will be that, which will impact their reputation and their image in the market. So is it important? Is information system security important? Absolutely is important, because companies, they have to hold into these data that give them that competitive advantage over other organizations. And there are some laws that mandate that. And every day we hear, in a bit, we're going to see a few examples of data breaches that happened just recently in January of 2021. So in a month, there's at least 12 incidents. These are 12 incidents that we know about where thousands of records were lost just because of technology or because of a human behavior that caused these security breaches. So I mentioned here that we have some laws that mandate this, and so these are some U.S. compliance laws. For us in the university, we have FERPA, because we are under the education. So for healthcare industry, they have their own bank, government, corporation. Each discipline, each sector has their own laws that mandate organizations to protect the privacy and to protect the data they have about consumers or about patients, about stakeholders they have in their organizations. So if you heard me, I talked a lot about data and I talked about information. I mentioned these two words a lot. I know we're not here to take any English lecture. Forgive me for that. But I hear many people, they use these two words interchangeably. And so I want to ask you guys and see what do we have. So data and information, are these two words, are they the same? Do data and information have the same meaning? I want you to write in the chat and tell us, are they the same? Are data and information the same? If yes, yes. If no, why and how? So we heard from Stephanie and Holden Price, Dean Fisher, Sean Fisher. Not exactly. I like Stephanie's answer. So Stephanie said, data is the raw form of information. It must be analyzed to become information. No data is raw numbers with no real meaning. Information is when you look at data and derive meaning from it. Not exactly. I like Stephanie's answer. Data are just facts. Information is organized. That's good. So at least here I have in our crowd here that it seems we all agree that data and information are not the same, which is correct. Data and information are not the same. Data are the raw material that we have. We have to process it in order to get information. So for instance, if we're talking about stock prices, we get all these different numbers per day going up and down. So if you look at the numbers, by just looking at the numbers, it will not make sense. I can process, for instance, but in a graph, line chart, or if I have pie chart, if different scenarios, so, and then I can see, is it going up, is it going down, is it going up and down? So I transform the data, the raw material that I can't see, into actual information that I make sense of it. The second question is, now the data, is it singular or plural? Do I say data is or data are? What do you think? Data are, Lisa. Data are. Do you all agree data are? What is the singular? If data are plural, what's the singular? Thanks, Bill. So data is singular, data are. So again, this is another word that I hear from many people. They say data is. So data, it should be are. And these are here data information, because I teach students in MIS, Management Information Systems. We have information, right? And this, I defined it earlier. And I teach analytics. So we're dealing with data. So the first thing I emphasize on my student is this fact here. So now let's go back to our topic, the data. So data classification, what are the kind of data we have in organization? We have private data about people, confidential. These are the organization. These are the secrets of the organizations. We have internal use only, and we have public domain data that can be shared with the public. Okay, so now what are the tenets of information system security? When we're talking about information system security, what are the tenets? So we have CIA. What's CIA? CIA is not the intelligence agency that you know, okay? So CIA, you have three words. We have confidentiality. I have Elizabeth, yes, data, but I wonder at what point will Webster Dictionary will change this to fit with common usage. I don't know, we need somebody to talk to Webster Dictionary, Elizabeth. Okay, so we have confidentiality, we have integrity, and we have availability. So confidentiality, we need to make sure that only people who should access the data, they have access to the data. Integrity, we have to make sure that the data are valid, uncorrupted, and availability, it means the system is up and running and people, they can access their data at the same time. So confidentiality, we do this. So for instance, in your organization, or talking about us in the university, we have limited access to students' information or to some department because we're not allowed. If we don't have any business with this data, we should not get access to it. Integrity, we need to make sure we don't give access for anybody to update or change or delete anything in the database. Availability, we need the system to be up and running. So on this availability, we're talking about when we hear the system is down or the website is down, this is when we talk about availability. And for the information system security, we're talking about the data, the server, all the infrastructure, they have to be up and running all the time. So with the security, we talk when we're measuring information security and the implications of a security breach, we talk about three things. This is how we assess it. We have the risk, we have the threat, and the vulnerability. The risk is the probability that something will happen to the data. And the threat is anybody or any action that can compromise this data, whereas the vulnerability, any weakness that can harm the data. And we're going to see more examples about this and explain what do we mean by this. Security breach, what it is, it's any event that mess up with the CIA, any event that mess up with these three things that we have here: the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if the system goes down, if anybody gets access to the data, to delete, to update, to make any changes in the data, or harm the hardware or the software or of the company. So what are most common threats for data and systems in organizations? So we have here malicious software. We've heard a lot about these, such as virus, worm, Trojan horse, rootkit, spyware, etc., etc. There are many, many more. We're not here in this lecture to talk about these. Hardware or software failure, internal attackers. These are insiders inside the organization, whether employees or users of the system. Equipment theft. It's clear defined here. External attackers. These are the hackers, the black hat hackers. We have the natural disaster, such as when you have hurricane, when you have tornado, etc. Terrorism and social engineering. Social engineering. Do you guys know what's social engineering? Social engineering, anybody? Anybody can tell us what social engineering? Don't cheat, don't Google. Can you define what you mean? Definitely. So social engineering is basically when somebody is trying to get information from you over the phone. So for instance, they call you to say, hey, X, okay, hey, Jennifer, we're calling you from human resource and we're updating our information. Can you give us your username? So you give the username. The second day or after a few days, they call you, Jennifer, we have your username and we are trying to make an update. Can you give us your password or your email? I want to get some information and send you. So they'll send you this information and they can get, like Linda did to Tom, not exactly. Linda and Tom, these are two employees working together. Here in social engineering, this is somebody from outside and they're trying to call you to get access or to get your personal information or critical information from you over the phone without letting you know that they want to steal. Here in this particular problem with Linda and Tom, both of them, they were working together in the organization. It's not considered to be social engineering. I talked before and I said I will share with you some recent breaches. These are, I just chose 6 out of 12 that happened in January of 2021. So we have, these are 3, and in the next slide, I'm going to show another 3. The first one, VIP Games, which is an online game. So 23 million records were lost. Another one, we have malware attack, and they lost 219,000 patients of Nebraska medicine. A hacker downloaded the Bonobos men's clothing retailer and they lost 7 million customers. Elizabeth asked, do all companies these days do the type of phishing test like IU does? They do much more than what we do here in IU. When I was in Texas, UT has more strict and more training than this. I will talk about this in a bit. In 5 minutes, I will talk more about this, what organizations do and what other universities they do compared to us. These are 3 other more recent data breaches. So we're talking about 1 million, 2.28 million data, 214 million data. And the last one here, one of them was, it had some credit card. So on this one here, we had partial credit card records for 7 million customers. So we see the impact of data leakage in information security. It's critical for organizations and for employees or for us as customers and for government, because here we're talking in general, and then you can apply this to different entities, starting from individual level to organizational to state to country to nation, etc. So, but now, when we're talking about security, what do you think is the biggest issue to organizations when dealing with information security? Is it internal or external? Is it technical or non-technical? What do you think? I mentioned all of what I mentioned so far to talk about the impact. I talk about the different attacks from malicious software, from so we have external post-it notes, internal, 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 internal. The answer is internal. And thanks to Erica. So Erica mentioned post-it notes. Okay, so post-it note is one of the main things that happen in organizations. What we mean by post notes is people, they tend to write their username or password and they put it on post note, and then they will put it on the computer. So the biggest issue for organizations is more the insiders or the employees inside it, from employees or the social engineering. These are the two most critical. Then these are the nightmare more than the technical, because in technical they have the IT department. Nice one, Josh. So you hide it under your phone. So here, organization, they have the IT department, and the IT department is working on protecting and having the right software and the right hardware to protect the organizations. And they are seeing the attack. They're seeing the enemy coming from outside. But when you have the enemy inside your home, this is the problem, because you can't predict and you don't know how and when and what's happening. I'm going to give you a few examples now of violating the security policy in organizations or causing some problems. So I will start with university first, since we are in university and work in university. So a faculty member takes student grades home on a regular USB drive. So this violates the FERPA. I talked earlier about FERPA. FERPA, it's which is the law for privacy law for students. So this here, if you take it on regular USB, and I'm saying regular USB because we have the regular USB that you have, and there's the encrypted USB, where you can use the encrypted USB to encrypt the data, and then it becomes safer to use it later on. Here's another example. So we have an employee makes a mistake in direct deposit. Office 1 emails the account number and deposit amount to Office 2. Let's say I'm working with my colleague and I want to make a payment. I send the information, I send the wrong information. So this is not right to do. So account numbers, IDs, passwords should not be sent through emails. Same thing, I always remind my colleagues, when students in the university, they ask us about the grade. What is my grade? What did I get on this? And we tend to send, oh, you got an A, you got 7.3, you got 9.9, whatever. This shouldn't happen. You should not send any of this information in an email. What if your email gets hacked? So now we come back to our friend Tom. So this Tom is working with Linda, and they're working on this. And when I asked you about this, some of you said, yes, definitely, he should give the information to Linda. Others said, well, there are ways to do it. They can share. And others, I believe they said, no way, I can't do it. And I guess Dean Fisher, who said, I will violate the security policy, which was the correct answer. So in this way, no matter what, no matter who the person asking for your personal information, this should not be shared with anybody in our organizations based on the information security policy that these organizations have in place. So to avoid and to deal with these employees' behavior and with the insiders, organizations, they implement these security policies. These security policies, the role of this security policy is to protect the data from insiders to harm and cause any harm for these data. I shared with you here some hypothetical. This was a hypothetical case, this hypothetical case, and this hypothetical case. Now I'm going to show you some actual example where employees did it. So look at this case. In South Carolina, an employee emails sensitive information to their unauthorized accounts. Guess what? So the email was hacked. 22,600 Medicaid ID and Social Security numbers were stolen. We all know what happened when social security numbers are stolen. Another case, personal information of 780,000 Medicaid patients and recipients of children's health insurance were stolen in 2018. So again, what happened? A hacker was able to break one employee's password. When organizations ask us to change, so now I go back to, I guess, Elizabeth asked me, do other organizations do this kind of thing that we do here? I've been here at IU now for 7 years. I know this is recorded, Josh. I wish if you can stop this recording now. So in 7 years, I was only asked once to change my password. Now with this, is this the correct thing to do? Should we have this? The answer is definitely no. When I was in UT, I had to change my password every 6 months. This is just one example. And I'm talking about just a university. When you go to private sector organization, each organization has different type of policy. This should be the one of the policies. When I said organizations, they come up with security policies to solve such a problem. So you're not allowed to put the sticky note that we said where you have your username and password. You must change your password. Your password have to be 15, let's say, character. You need to have capital and lower. You need to have special symbols, etc. So all of these, the combination of all of these are to make the password harder and to make it harder for hackers and to make it harder for technology to solve. This is why employees are harder than technology, because there are technology that work to find out and find the password, but the harder the password, the harder it becomes for the technology to break in and find the password. So other threats from employees, these are other threats. Lack of awareness. Many employees in an organization, they're not aware whether they have security policy in organization or not. This is based on my research that I found. So I go to big organizations and when you ask employees about security policy, they said, huh? Do we have security policy in our organization? What's that? So some of them, they just want to violate. They don't care. Whatever the security policy says, I don't care. I am living whatever I want to live. This is how I'm used to. Getting data, as we talk about, downloading photos, using Facebook, using all the social media on their machine and bringing in their own device. I didn't talk here about the BYOD, which is the bring your own device to organizations. Many organizations, they don't allow this, or they have some, if you remember at the top, at the very beginning of my lecture, I was talking about having strategy in organizations. So they have strategy, they have some policies for this. If you're bringing in your cell phone, if you want to use your cell phone on our network, you have to use it and you have to follow our policies to use it. If you don't, you can't use your phone, you can use your tablet, you can't use any of your technology you have. Okay, and some, they do it just for sabotage and they want just to disrupt organization. So to solve it, again, so I talked about this a bit before. So to solve the user's threat, the insider's threats, the employees' behavior in organizations, so we use information security policies and information security plans to solve this problem. So what are security policies? So there's a framework for the security policy in organization. First, we're talking about the policy. Each policy, we have standard, we have procedures, and we have guidelines. Definitely not. Elizabeth asked, she said, apparently you can't use beef stew as a password. It's a stroganoff. So you can't use it. It's simple, but I hope it's not your password. So for in organization, we have policies. So policies for different things, starting from emails. How should you write emails? How to send emails? To using VPN. Somebody mentioned VPN. To using flash drive. So for each one, we have different standards and we have different procedures. How should you do it? You can't blindly tell, let's say, employees, you need to use VPN. First, you need to explain to them what's VPN, virtual, okay, virtual private network, and you need to explain, to tell them how should you use it and when to use it, etc. And then you need to give them the guidelines. Same thing on using social media. You need to tell them, hey, you're not allowed to use social media because if you're using social media, there are, etc. So the consequences of having this. Now we come to users' reactions. I'm working in my organization. I'm used to use simple password. I write beef stew. I write corned beef. I write whatever this simple stuff, right? Or I use a sticky note, or I send a report, financial report. I send to the printer. The printer is not in my office. We have an office, common office for different printer. I print it, and then I'm sitting here, and then I go to pick them up after 30 minutes. So a customer who's passing by finds this and then take that and go. That's why employees are harder to manage than the technology. So moving away from desktop without locking the screen. So anybody with a USB drive now, external drive or hard drive, they can just copy paste or just get in the system and they can get all the data that they need from the system. That's why employees are hard to. So when organization implement these systems are going to change the way things are done. All the processes in organization, they have to be changed. And we as human beings, we prefer the status quo. We don't like the change. So for this reason, first they hate them, they resist, and they do not comply. These are the three things that happen when security policies are implemented on organizations. So what do they do? What do organizations do? They have different approach, from awareness to training to creating security culture to management support to impose management to surveillance, etc., etc. Awareness, many organizations, they go and they run the training. So for us here in IU, we do some training. Other universities, they have more sessions of training for their faculty and for their employees and for their students who work. They have to take tests and they have to score a certain level on the test to pass the test. Failure of doing that, it will lead to not getting paid at the end of the month. So it is serious. In organization, the same thing. They do the training. Training goes from blogs into sending a newsletter, into attending webinar or attending some videos where you sit down and watch, similar to what we do at IU. I'm not sure. Probably we have um, some attendees here who are not from the university and attending. I'm not sure what kind of things they do at their organization. It depends on the size of the organization. It depends on the industry of the organization they do the training. Top management support, it has to be serious. This is one of the things that I investigated in my research. Similar to any project that's been done in an organization, if the top management, they don't walk the talk, it will not, whatever you're doing, you're going to fail in that project. So they have to show CEOs, CIOs, or the C levels, all supervisors, they have to show that we're serious about the security policy in our organizations, and they have to follow and use whatever they're trying to do. Organization, they impose punishment also. The punishment goes from just oral or written letters to all the way to being fired from organization. I know many organizations, they fire their employees if they don't follow the security policy. Again, this depends on how large is the organization, and it depends on the industry. Surveillance also, organization, they use surveillance in terms of software or cameras to see what organization they're behaving. So in all of these, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. From privacy, your work in your work in a culture, you don't want to have anybody watching you, etc., etc. But this is fact. I'm citing here facts, what organizations do in their workplaces. So now, what did I find in my research? So I said I've been researching this topic for at least now 9 years, 10 years. Um, so what did I find? I found that top management support is important. It is critical. If employees in organization, they don't feel that the management, the top management is supporting, is serious about this, they don't care. Think about yourself and think about a situation where you're doing something or somebody is trying to make you change what you're doing something and you find that person is kind of lenient. So are you going to really put that effort to change? Another factor that I came up with and I found, which is task dissonance. Task dissonance, basically, I define it. This factor, I developed it and I measured it empirically. Task dissonance is basically the differences of your perception, the person's perception, and what others they think. So, for instance, using VPN or using encryption. So, by using encryption, it tends, for those who use VPN for those who use encryption, it tends to lower the performance. So, instead, let's say a task, for instance, I'm just giving to make it simple. Let's say a task that takes 1 hour, it might take 40 minutes or 45 minutes. So it slows down the performance of the employees. So if a person is working on a project that takes, let's say, 10 hours, now it's going to take 13 hours or 14 hours. Is that person going to like the 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 new thing that you're saying? Although you're saying, oh, it's great, it's going to be great, it's saving data, it's saving my data, it's saving customer data, organization. So this is another thing where there's a conflict between the perception that employees have or users have about the task they're doing and what the organization say. Punishment certainty and severity, definitely it's a critical factor, and this is based on theory. There are theories in different disciplines, psychology, management, etc. So there are different theories, from protection motivation theory to general deterrent theory, that says if a person thinks that the punishment is certain or is going to be severe, that person will not commit any bad behavior such as crime or littering or speeding, etc., etc. So I applied the same thing, the same concept on security compliance, and I found it to be also significant. Reward is something new that's not been done, unfortunately, in organization nowadays, because for organization, they believe you are hired to do this task and complying with the security policy is part of your task. Although some can argue, or you may argue that, well, you're making my life miserable, etc., etc. So I ran 2 experiments and I found that reward can be a significant factor that can enhance security compliance or resistance to these security. Creating norms in organization, I talked before about the hurt, so having that norm in the organizations, from moral thinking that this is moral to seeing others are doing these things. So when you have, let's say, the more people they buy in and they use they comply with the security policies, more people they will do it. Word of mouth is another factor that I borrow from marketing. So when you hear people talking about the severity and the importance of what happened because of breach, etc., so it's key. And habit. So we talked before, said status quo. We tend to have status quo. So whatever habit we have, we tend to take it for longer time. So organizations, they need to take these factors into consideration when dealing with security. I've published research before where I have these factors. I'm still working on this subject. I'm actually now on sabbatical this semester, and I'm continuing working on these. And I mentioned here a few of the areas that I'm working right now on. So I guess I took more than what Josh asked me to take. I'm gonna stop here. Thank you again for listening. I hope you were not bored. Now I open for questions, comments, feedback, if you have any, etc.
So at this point, folks, you can feel free to use the Q&A module if you want to make sure we see your questions there, or we'll watch the chat room as well, wherever you feel it's easier for you to type them.
Thanks. I will give people a minute or two to think of questions. I have a somewhat unique question while people are thinking. I happen to work for a large company that deals with a lot of health information, and we have very, very large amounts of protected health information that we have access to, and the security requirements are like astronomical. Like they'll lock me out of my computer if I don't change my password every 6 weeks. If I don't take the trainings, I get locked out, so on and so forth. And I was thinking while you were talking that like that level of security seems appropriate for my job, and the levels of security that may be appropriate for those working in other types of environments, and an educational environment or whatever, when you think about like printing something off on the printer, and what's the harm if, not the harm, but, what's the impact overall of somebody picking maybe a piece of paper up from the printer that was not intended for them versus, a breach of, 2.5 million, health records. So I'm just wondering if you've thought, of any of your research a little bit about like the scaling up or down of security requirements and how employees react to that based on, the type of work that they're doing or the type of environment that they're in.
Definitely, that's what I mentioned, when I was talking in my talk. So it depends on the industry, and it depends on the organization, how large it is or how small. So if you're talking about large organization, and if you're talking about the healthcare, so for sure you can't play as you can say, you can't go wrong in these cases. I give you examples talking about the sharing these the employee's behavior or the user's behavior. So all of us, we go to banks, right? So when you go to bank and you're done with the teller or with the person who's helping you, what's the first thing they do before they move? They lock their screen, right? They have to lock their screen and move. So in banks, they have surveillance, they have camera, they see. Do you know what happens if you don't lock your screen and you move? You're fired. So this gives you an idea about, so this is what happened. Although nothing might happen, but they have zero level tolerance in this case. Whereas another organization you go, they're fine with it, so it all depends, and it depends from industry to industry. You can't compare education to healthcare, for instance, or to financial, or you can't compare financial to a commercial. Let's say if you go to here where they have RVs companies, so if you go to RV company versus healthcare, let's say more hospital, so there's no comparison. It all depends on the industry. It all depends on the tolerance level the organization they have.
I have a follow-up question from Elizabeth about non-compliance and resistance and how widespread it is, and that it might also depend on the industry. But what have you found in terms of non-compliance and resistance?
Oh, it is so spread everywhere. All countries, all governments, anywhere you go, you hear about this problem. People, they don't want to comply, or they try some ways to comply. Nowadays we are in better shape than we were 5 years ago or 7 years ago. So 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago and before, used to hear a lot of incidents that happened just because of employees unawareness or unseriousness. They're not serious, etc. So now organizations, they're taking more attention into the training and the awareness to make their employees more aware of that. But still, it is there.
Thank you. Bill's asking that there seems to be a disconnect between requiring more secure passwords and the number of times that they ask you to change it, and also expecting good employee behavior. Is there a sweet spot between those two things?
Definitely, there's a sweet spot. I am not happy when they come as an employee. When they come, if they come to me and tell me every 6 weeks you have to change it, or every 4 weeks. But also as employee, you know, as you said before, depending on the industry, if I'm working in critical situation or in industries where you have critical data, you need to be aware of that, and you need to make sure you comply with these security policies. What I found is that you see both cases. You see many organizations, they are very lenient, and you see many organizations that are so strict, especially big, large organizations. They get stricter and stricter because they care about their reputation, they care about their image. They don't want, for instance, Sharp or Sony or any of these to say, oh, they have a hack. Or we all watch news, right? And you see what happened when any of these organization or a bank or something gets hit. So people, the second day or immediately, they start acting, did my information, what happened to my information, what happened to my social security, etc., etc., right? So
I have another question here that's a very interesting one. Are there security challenges that you found that are specific to small businesses, or challenges perhaps that small businesses tend to have more than large?
small businesses are like exactly like large businesses. And a security incident can happen at any time. But it all depends on how aware and how serious is the owner of the business. When I was in Texas, I helped a small to medium size clinic implementing security policy, and whatever I was seeing in Panasonic at that time and GE, we implemented almost the same thing in that clinic, and that clinic was almost probably a fraction of a department in one of the companies that I mentioned, and we applied the same thing. But now also you go to other organizations, they don't care. This is the fact.
Yeah. Great question from Bill. When Google makes up a secure password for me and it will remember it for me, is that a good thing?
Sure not.
No?
For sure not.
Okay.
For sure not.
Why? Could you explain a little bit?
Because I simply don't trust Google. I don't trust anybody. Because I give you example. Last month in January 2021, Microsoft was hacked because of one of their employees, insider of the organizations. He did some sabotage stuff in one of the projects. So even Google, who's Google to trust, right? So you should trust only yourself.
But Google would have the password whether you generated it, and I guess, is there a difference between them keeping it on file where you can have the computer remember your password for you, versus you trying to remember it or writing it on a Post-it note or something?
Correct.
Yeah. What are the difference? Is there a difference in that from your perspective that we should be?
If you see when how I use my computer, or how I use my phone, or how I use all of this stuff, so I always get these questions: do you want to save? Do you don't want to save? I don't save. I change passwords for every bank. I have a password for school. I have a password for different systems. I have passwords. So I don't trust any of that. I don't trust any of the technology that can help me when it comes to security and my personal data. And this is what I always, this is the message that I always give students when I teach any class related to this topic.
Great.
Because awareness starts from school. If students, they are aware, because many people that you meet, outside, they're not aware of the consequences, or they're not aware of what happened if I do this or I do that. Many people, unfortunately, you go, let's say, on Facebook or any other website, you can say, I'm eating X wherever at this hospital, I went to this place. They take pictures. Even on their cell phone, go on their cell phone, they have tracked the maps, track the place or the location. It's always on. So all of these are all data. They are all recorded. You download applications, and you have to agree. The first thing they say, agree. People, they click on agree without saying, what are you doing? You're sharing your personal data. They're collecting data. Who's getting this data? Are they selling this data? What happened? So.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pause and see if there's any last questions. I wondered also if you had observed any noticeable issues around like social pressure with your example for that you provided and had us speak to. There seemed to be social pressure to change the password, and again, in my mind, I was thinking I would have so much pressure to not. I would feel like it was a trap or something from the what I've been ingrained with is like if like my they would say like no, the social pressure would be to not share the password. So I wonder if there's any social
the social pressure definitely it's very important. You know, if you have a good crowd, you're going to have good and positive outcome. If you have negative crowd, you're going to have negative outcome. So that's why organization culture, and that's why it comes from the top management support. Top management, they have to be involved, and they have, so involvement of top management is key into that to show the importance and the consequences and what happened if any breach happened in an organization.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Josh, to close us out.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you very much, Professor Merhi. This has been pretty enlightening. If you could come over tomorrow and change all my passwords for me, I would really. Thank you so much, everybody. I want to remind you all before you go. In 1 month's time, we'll have Professor Rebecca Brittenham giving a terrific talk about the poetics and politics of walking. Just in time for spring, we should actually be able to navigate the sidewalks on a healthy stroll by then. Please watch for that in the coming month. You of course can always find Professor Merhi's talk and all our other recorded lectures at go.iu.edu/popup. We'll have more talks in April and May as well, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay warm. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, Mo. Good night, Stephanie.